The following material is for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be and should not be used as a guide for conducting an actual dredging operation. Dredging is a highly regulated and potentially dangerous activity and should only be conducted by a qualified master, crew, and vessel, licensed pursuant to and operating in conformity with all applicable federal, state, and local laws and regulations.
Rock on. So this is a dredging primer as told by Tony Dow. That's me. Hi, I'm Tony Dow, your dredging primer. Let's see. Here we are. In the old days, you can see up in this picture, there's two little side weak links. They kind of look like this, but they're a little bit darker in color. In the very old days, there used to be four of those, one on each chain, which then got changed to just two on each chain, or one on each chain on two sides, which then got changed to now the one on that side is located up by the pair ring at the top of the link and not down on the dredge. Here's a little box of rocks, and this is a chain rigged dredge. Here's some weak links. We talk about these more in a video, so we can go through that later, but the idea being, if the dredge is hung up, the weak link bolt will break, and then you get your dredge back without exceeding the working load limit of the wire. In the old days, we would make them weak by different values of the bolts. You can see in this picture, there's 50 bolts that are worth 5,000 pounds, some are 8,000 pounds, some are 11,000 pounds. It's good to keep them in the bags if you're going to do it that way, but it's even better to just manufacture your weak links on site with a known thickness of metal that you remove on a ship's lathe. Here's a quick graphic on weak links. You can see there's a brass bolt that's kind of thin, or a big steel bolt that's kind of fat, and that's worth more. When you rig the weak link, just for giggles, you want to have the part that breaks off be the small part. At least then you don't lose everything. You get one more little bit, although it's kind of a bummer if you lose it, but it's cheaper to make a few of these. So your tension with the weak links, you're measuring your tension on the A-frame on the ship, and that's not including the weight of the wire at the weak link. The weak link doesn't see the weight of the wire. The weak link only sees like the tension against the little rocks. So we have a whole spreadsheet to go through that helps you determine what value to use for your weak link. There's also working load limits and proof loads and minimum break strengths and all these things. It's good to have a little handle on some of this stuff, because the weak link, there's no sort of working load limit. The weak link is you want it to break at that amount. The shackle, though, the shackle might be rated for, this is 4 3/4 tons, but a 4 3/4 ton shackle might actually really break at like 13,000 or 39,000 pounds or something like that. So the shackle might have a safety factor of 4 to 1, 5 to 1, 6 to 1, depending. The weak link has no safety factor. And incidentally, on shackles, we're kind of going away from shackles, and hammerlocks are a lot stronger. Hammerlocks are used the world over by the commercial fishing industry because they last longer and they're stronger, easier to use, and they don't hang up and they don't need cotter pins on them. The other part is the chain. If you're using lightweight chain and you really start pulling on it, your chain itself can blow out, so you want to make sure you have strong chain. Here's just a little graphic to show you can have two different grades of chain that are the same size, and they have vastly different ratings on them. Double for grade 30 is half, grade 40, grade 43 is double what that is. Here's a little calculator. This is a working document. It's been tweaked a bunch. There's a new video about this that's online, and we talk about that, but let's just give you an idea. You enter in these values and it helps calculate, helps you choose your weak link. The other very important thing is to know what winch you're working with. That's the 5 W's of what winch we're working with. And if you have a drum winch, we're going to show you a video about how drum winches are maybe not the best way to go dredging. The drum winch is very important, absolutely important that you know the history of the winch, when it was last paid out, to what depth, and spooled back on under what tension. If it's not spooled on under any significant tension, and then you take it out to go piston coring or dredging or even multi-coring, you're going to have a problem, and you're not going to want to be on that boat with that problem. So that's the drum winch. The traction winch is different. The traction heads are where all the tension is produced, and then after they go around the traction heads, they end up going over to a storage drum where they're laid up in a constant tension around 1,000 pounds. Traction winch is your friend when you're dredging. If you're dredging with synthetic tension members and you're using a traction winch, you don't want to spin the traction heads on the synthetic. You'll melt it and damage the wire. So they're not, it's not completely carefree, but it's very important to know what winch you're working with. This needs to be part of your planning process from day one. And if you are given a ship with a drum winch, you need to know and verify and absolutely ascertain when the last time that winch went to full ocean depth and what the tension was when they spooled that back on. Very, very important. Here's a little pinger, best pinger shot in the world. And pingers are great for keeping track of how deep your wire, how hard, and your angle on the seabed, how you're fishing. Here's a little bit of the pinger use, the pinger line and the seabed, and you'll cross multiple times. We're just going to skip over this a little bit, but it's explained very well in the Benthos Pinger Manual. And here's a little graphic that explains your multi-path errors. 732 meters is key. The other thing when you're dredging, you want to keep cognizant that each dredge is not contaminating the next dredge sample. So once you've dumped all the rocks on board, everybody's got all the rocks they want, hose off the deck, hose out the tarp, get all that product overboard or back in a tote in the lab, and be ready for the next dredge. Usually you've got a couple hours to go through. If you're getting a lot of big rocks and you want time to get them off the deck quickly, you can make a little dolly for them on your pallet jack to move the material off the deck, gets it inside. The bridge likes that. People are off the deck, they can get underway faster. You're probably spending a couple $1,000s an hour at sea for the ship time, so the faster you can get off the deck and get underway, keep the ship happy, the better that'll be received. These little shiny parts on the steel cable here, that's important. You want to see that. You want to know you're fishing hard on the bottom or dredging hard on the bottom. And that's okay, because you're going to cut the last chunk of cable off after this cruise anyways, because it's been through the ringer, through the seabed, dragging through rocks. But that's a good indicator that you're right there and things are working. This is also a little trick photo because you're supposed to look at it and find something wrong with it. And without spending too much more time right here, there's no cotter pin. Cotter pin is important. Put the cotter pin in. The other thing that's kind of funny is you can spend all this time going to the seabed, dragging for a couple hours off the seabed, and you can only catch one rock. And you're like, how did that happen? And we actually have a video how that happens. If you tow or dredge around on a gravel pit, you can see all the rocks going away from the dredge. So this was amazing that we caught this one rock. Here is our little graphic about continental drifters.